Hi, and welcome to this short section on knowing your water. And the reason I'm touching on this is because of any irrigation system design that you may be working on or installation, you really want to be aware of what your water source is. And it's very important with drip irrigation. Now, there's going to be three primary sources for your water. One is going to be irrigation water, which is simply non-potable, untreated water, which can be flowing in open ditches, or it could be piped. It could be, another source would be a domestic well, such as what I am on here at our home. And finally, you may be on a water district where you're paying for treated water that is metered, so it's coming into your home, you're paying for it on a monthly or quarterly basis, and you're using treated water both for your domestic purposes and for your irrigation water as well. So we're going to take a look at all three of these just briefly, because each of them will have kind of their own little nuance as far as filtration, some to a greater degree than others. So let's start with irrigation water. So the first water source we're going to look at is open ditch water. This is irrigation water. This is untreated, non-potable water. And as you can see, this water is just flowing freely out in the countryside. This is close to our home. And any kind of debris can fall into this. And what you're going to see as we're looking at this is what we call a pre-filter. So we actually have a large mesh screen in the ditch itself where a lot of this debris can be filtered out or trapped on the outside of this screen before the big stuff goes into the holding tank and consequently gets pumped on over to whatever your water source is. Now, a lot of times when you're working out of the irrigation ditch, this water will go into a holding tank, and then you'll have some kind of a pump on a pressure switch that at that point will be tied into your irrigation controller. And when the clock says for it to come on, then it sends a relay signal to the pump, and that kicks the pump on, and now you have your water pressure coming out. And you're still going to get a certain amount of debris coming through that has gotten into the holding tank and gets sucked up into the piping. So when we're dealing with this, we're going to want to make sure that we have plenty of filtration to protect our drip irrigation or any other irrigation devices that we're using on the property. And yes, it can look like a natural stream. It can be really nice to walk along, but when it comes to having to do your irrigation off this, filtration is going to be really important, and you're going to want to monitor your filters on a fairly regular basis, probably weekly, at least until you get a feel for how clean or dirty this water can be and how much debris is being pumped through that could impact your irrigation devices. Okay, so that's kind of an overview of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about ditch water or irrigation water. So let's look at a typical domestic well. Okay, our next source of water can be a domestic well. That's what I'm on here at our home. And a domestic well, ours is about 100 feet deep. I have been on properties where it can be as much as 600 feet deep, but this is a private well. It is not metered. It's here on your own property. You're pumping up water, and in many cases, this water can be very clean. In other instances, you could be bringing a lot of sand up. You may have iron deposits. And as we open up this one drip filter, this is on our property, and you can see this has been in the ground now for probably at least a year, year and a half. And I haven't maintained it probably as much as I should, but then again, I know that our well actually pumps fairly clean. So as you look at this filter, there is some impaction to it. There's a little bit of iron deposit and sediment, but it's not bad considering how long it's been in the ground, and it's running every, 3 days, something like that. So it's getting a fair amount of water going through to irrigate our vegetable beds. But this is the kind of thing that you want to monitor when you're dealing with domestic wells, is what kind of debris, what kind of minerals are being drawn up that could impact a drip filter. And you're going to have a pretty good idea of what's going on just by looking at your sink or a bathtub and seeing what kind of colors or deposits may be happening just because you're working off of what could be hard water with a lot of minerals or calcium and such like that in it. So that's just one more consideration. And with a domestic well, it's more a matter of just keeping these filters clean and scrubbing them out, keeping an extra filter handy to where you can take the dirty one and put it into a bucket of soapy water, let it kind of soak for a day or so, then it scrubs out maybe a little bit easier, but you always have a clean filter cartridge to put in place so that you're not going to be down as far as running your irrigation. The irrigation, the untreated ditch water, on the other hand, is going to have a lot more solids in it as far as organic solids with weeds and debris, potentially plant seeds, perennial seeds, such like that. So two different applications or water sources and two different filtration situations that you're going to have to be aware of. So our last one is our typical city water or municipal water, and we'll just take a real brief look at that because it's pretty foolproof. All right, be right back. Our last water source I just want to run through is city water or municipal water, and this is water that's going to be metered, and it's required by law by, I believe, 2020 here in California to have all municipal sources metered, and so that's going to be an issue out there. But take a look at this and a couple of different meters that you may have on your property or at the edge of your property, and one is going to be a dial style, and so you've got a sweep hand that goes around and it measures in cubic feet, and the other one is a digital, still measuring in cubic feet, but it's the same idea. This water has been treated, it has been filtered, it has been screened, and so it comes to your home very, very clean. That doesn't mean you don't want to keep an eye on your drip filters at least a couple of times a year, at the beginning and at the end of the season, or at the beginning and halfway through, just to be certain that everything's okay. But chances are everything's going to be fine, and working with a 150 mesh filter like the one I showed you when I was showing the impaction on the drip filter for our domestic well is going to be more than adequate for any kind of drip irrigation system that you're working with. So that's what we're dealing with water sources: domestic wells, open ditch water, and then municipal water from your local water agency. And the cleanest, of course, is going to be from the agency. Your domestic well would probably be next, although that's not necessarily true. And then finally, your ditch water, whether it be your irrigation water, I should say, whether it be open ditch or piped. But those are the three sources we're working with, and I just wanted you to be a little more aware of that and the filtration needs regarding each of those. So in our next lesson, we're going to talk about soils, because particularly with drip irrigation, that's going to have an impact on how this water is distributed or how it infiltrates and distributes itself. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next lesson.